He thought I was just another girl in the lab typing code. He thought stealing my idea would make it his glory. But in America, where a single line of code can change your life, betrayal comes with a price. And he never imagined that price would come due so fast. 24 hours. That's all it took to watch his empire crumble while mine rose from the ashes of his deception. This is my story of how I turned theft into triumph. My name is Emily Carter. And at 32, I've learned that in the tech world, your value isn't measured by your dedication or brilliance. It's measured by who gets the credit. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Oakland, where my mother worked double shifts as a nurse and my father fixed cars until his back gave out. They taught me that hard work was the only currency that mattered. They were wrong, but I wouldn't learn that until much later. Riverside Bay isn't Silicon Valley, but it desperately wants to be. The city sprawls along the California coast, 40 miles south of San Francisco. Close enough to taste the tech money, but far enough to breed its own particular brand of hunger. The coffee shops overflow with entrepreneurs pitching to anyone who'll listen. And every other building sports a startup logo you've never heard of. Yet, it's where dreams come to either flourish or die quietly. Away from the scrutiny of TechCrunch headlines. I'd been at Neuroforge Labs for 3 years when everything changed. The company occupied the 3rd and 4th floors of a converted warehouse. All exposed brick and Edison bulbs. Startup chic on a budget. We were small, just 43 employees. But what we lacked in size, we made up for in ambition. Our CEO, Marcus, liked to say we were building the future of artificial intelligence, one algorithm at a time. Most days, I believed him. My workspace was a corner desk near the window, where I could watch the fog roll in from the bay while my code compiled. I'd surrounded myself with 3 monitors, a collection of dying succulents, and a photo of my parents from my MIT graduation, their faces glowing with pride that their daughter had made it out, made it up, made it somewhere. The idea came to me during a particularly brutal debugging session in late September. I'd been working on improving our machine learning model's efficiency when I realized the entire approach was backwards. Everyone in AI was obsessed with centralization, massive servers, enormous datasets, processing power that could heat a small city. But what if we went the other direction? What if we could create a system where AI models learned and adapted locally, sharing only their learnings, not their data? I called it federated adaptive learning. The concept was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of sending all data to a central server, the AI would learn on individual devices, then share only the knowledge gained, not the raw information. It would be faster, more private, and infinitely more scalable. Healthcare companies could train models on patient data without violating HIPAA. Financial institutions could detect fraud without exposing customer transactions. The applications were endless. For 2 weeks, I lived and breathed this idea. I filled 3 notebooks with equations and diagrams. I built proof-of-concept models that exceeded every benchmark we'd established. I barely slept, surviving on Thai takeout and an unhealthy amount of Red Bull. My apartment became a graveyard of pizza boxes and coffee cups, while my cat, Schrödinger, watched me descend into beautiful madness. The morning I finally really cracked it, I sat back in my chair and actually laughed out loud. The office was empty. It was 4:47 a.m. on a Saturday. Outside, Riverside Bay was still sleeping, unaware that in this converted warehouse on the 3rd floor, at a desk cluttered with candy wrappers and false starts, the future of artificial intelligence had just shifted. I should have kept it to myself. Should have filed the patents first, documented everything, protected what was mine. But I was naive enough to believe that in a company built on innovation, innovation would be rewarded. I was foolish enough to trust that my work would speak for itself, that merit mattered more than politics. How laughably, tragically wrong I was. Jonathan Hale had the kind of smile that opened doors and closed deals. At 38, our senior product director had perfected the art of looking thoughtful while saying nothing, of taking credit through proximity, of being in every important photo without ever being quite sure what he'd contributed. He wore designer sneakers with his business casual, drove a Tesla he couldn't quite afford, and had a way of turning every conversation into a pitch about himself. I'd never particularly liked John, but I'd never seen him as a threat either. That was my first mistake. It was a Tuesday morning in October when I made my second, fatal mistake. John had stopped by my desk, coffee in hand, wearing that practiced look of casual interest. "Emily, heard you've been burning the midnight oil. Marcus mentioned you might be onto something big." I should have been suspicious. John never came to the engineering floor unless he needed something. But I was exhausted, exhilarated, and desperate for resources to take my project further. "It's a completely new approach to distributed AI learning," I said, turning my monitor so he could see. "I call it federated adaptive learning." His eyes lit up in a way I mistook for genuine enthusiasm. For the next hour, I walked him through everything: the architecture, the algorithms, the potential applications. I showed him my notebooks, my test results, even the late-night scribbles where I'd first connected the dots. He asked all the right questions, made all the right impressed noises, and when he left, he squeezed my shoulder and said, "This is incredible. Emily, let's get you the resources you need." 3 days later, I was in the break room microwaving leftover pad thai when I overheard two junior developers talking. "Did you see John's presentation to the board yesterday? That federated learning thing is genius." "Right? I heard Sequoia's already interested. John might actually pull off that Series B." The container slipped from my hands, noodles splattering across the floor. I didn't even stop to clean them up. I found the meeting recording in our shared drive, filed under Strategic Initiatives, Confidential. My hands shook as I clicked play. There was John, standing in the conference room I'd never been invited to, presenting to our board of directors and two venture partners I recognized from their TechCrunch profiles. "I've been developing this concept for months," he said, clicking through slides that contained my diagrams, redrawn in corporate templates. "I call it federated adaptive learning. Word for word, concept for concept." Even the name I'd spent hours perfecting. He'd taken everything, wrapped it in his PowerPoint polish, and served it as his own innovation. The board members nodded appreciatively. The VCs leaned forward with interest. Our CEO, Marcus, actually applauded when John finished. I sat at my desk, numb, watching my work become his triumph. When he discussed the healthcare applications, he used my mother's diabetes as an example, though he'd changed it to his fictional aunt. When he explained the privacy advantages, he quoted, verbatim, something I'd said during our conversation, presenting it as his own insight. The next morning, Marcus called an all-hands meeting. John stood beside him, trying to look humble, while Marcus announced that Neuroforge would be pivoting to focus on John's groundbreaking federated learning platform. John would be leading the initiative, building a team, reporting directly to the board. "Of course," John said, his voice dripping with manufactured generosity. "I'll need strong engineering support. Emily, I'm hoping you'll consider joining the team as a technical contributor." Technical contributor, not lead engineer, not co-creator, technical contributor. Like I was some coding monkey he was graciously allowing to work on my own invention. The room applauded. My colleagues smiled and congratulated John. A few patted me on the back, telling me how lucky I was to work on such an innovative project. I wanted to scream, to stand up and show them my notebooks, my timestamps, my proof. But I knew how it would look. The bitter engineer who couldn't handle someone else's success. The woman who couldn't accept that a man had simply out-innovated her. That night, I sat in my apartment, Schrödinger purring in my lap, and opened my laptop to find an email from John. "Emily, excited to have you on the team. I've set up some time tomorrow to discuss your role. I think you'll find it's a great opportunity to learn and grow. J. Learn and grow. From my own work. Under the man who stole it." I closed the laptop, walked to my bathroom, and threw up. Then I washed my face, looked at myself in the mirror, tired eyes, clenched jaw, hands still trembling with rage, and made a decision. If he wanted to play this game, I'd teach him how it ended. The next 3 weeks were the darkest of my life. I showed up to work, sat through John's meetings, watched him butcher my concepts with his surface-level understanding, and said nothing. I coded what he asked me to code, fixed the problems he created, and bit my tongue until it bled. At night, I'd drive home, climb into bed fully clothed, and stare at the ceiling until dawn. My mother called twice a day. I stopped answering after the first week. "Emily, honey, you sound different," she'd said during our last conversation. "Is everything okay?" How could I tell her that everything she taught me about hard work and merit was a lie? That in the real world, thieves wore designer sneakers and gave TED Talks? My friend Sarah, a developer at Google, tried to intervene. We met at a dive bar in San Francisco, the kind of place where tech workers went to pretend they weren't tech workers. "Just document everything and go to HR," she said. "Nursing a whiskey sour. Or better yet, leave. Come to Google. I can get you an interview tomorrow." "And do what?" I asked, peeling the label off my beer bottle. "Run away, let him win, watch him build a unicorn on my work while I become another cog in someone else's machine? It's better than destroying yourself." But she didn't understand. This wasn't just about the theft. It was about every time I'd been overlooked, talked over, passed over, every time my ideas became someone else's inspiration, every time I'd been told to be patient, be professional, be reasonable. John hadn't just stolen my code, he'd stolen my faith in the system itself. The breaking point came during a team meeting in week 3. John was struggling to explain the theoretical foundation of federated learning to a potential partner. He kept mixing up gradient descent with gradient ascent, confusing distributed computing with decentralized architecture. I watched him flounder, waiting for him to turn to me for help. Instead, he bullshitted his way through, creating such a mangled explanation that the partner left looking confused and unconvinced. "Emily," John said after the partner left, his frustration barely concealed, "I need you to write up a technical brief, something simple, for people who aren't as technically sophisticated." As technically sophisticated as him? That night, I made 2 decisions. First, I would leave Neuroforge. Second, I would build something so undeniably mine that John's theft would become his own noose. I submitted my resignation the next morning. Marcus tried to convince me to stay, offering a small raise and vague promises about future opportunities. John seemed relieved, probably thinking I was no longer a threat. He even had the audacity to throw me a going-away party, standing there with grocery store cake, talking about how much I'd contributed to his project. "Emily's been instrumental in helping refine some of the implementation details," he said, raising a plastic cup of champagne. "We'll miss her attention to detail." Attention to detail, not vision, not innovation. Attention to detail. I smiled, raised my own cup, and said, "I'm sure you'll do great things with federated learning. John, just remember, the devil's in the details." A few people chuckled. John's smile tightened slightly, but he recovered quickly. He had no idea what was coming. My last day, I cleaned out my desk slowly, methodically. I took my notebooks, all of them, and made sure to forward myself every time-stamped email, every dated file, every piece of evidence that predated John's miraculous innovation. Not for legal action, that would take years and cost everything, but for something better, something poetic. As I packed up my dying succulents, Raj from the infrastructure team stopped by. "Hey, Emily, heard you're leaving. That sucks." He lowered his voice. "We all know, about the project, about who really—" "It doesn't matter," I said. And for the first time in weeks, I meant it. What matters is what happens next. That weekend, I met with 2 people. David Kim, my roommate from MIT who just left Apple with a healthy savings account and a hunger to build something meaningful. And Maria Rodriguez, a brilliant systems architect I'd met at a conference who was tired of being the only woman in the room at her hedge fund tech job. We met at my apartment, Schrödinger weaving between our legs as I spread out my notebooks on the coffee table. "This is federated adaptive learning," I said. "The real version, not the bastardized mess John's peddling." but something that could actually change the world. And I'm going to build it right this time. David studied the diagrams, his eyes widening. Emily, this is revolutionary. I know, I said. And that asshole thinks he stole it. But he only stole what I showed him, version 1. I've been developing version 2 in my head for 3 weeks, lying awake, thinking about every weakness in what he has, every place where his limited understanding will make him stumble. Maria looked up from the notebook. You're not just going to compete with him, you're going to destroy him. I met her eyes. He destroyed me first. I'm just returning the favor. We worked through the night, planning, strategizing, dreaming. By dawn, we had a company name, Aurelia Systems, after the aurora borealis, a light phenomenon that couldn't be contained or controlled. We had a plan. And most importantly, we had something John would never have: the complete vision, the deep understanding, the ability to build not just what was, but what could be. The war hadn't started yet, but I'd already won. Starting Aurelia Systems meant burning through my savings, maxing out 2 credit cards, and moving back into a studio apartment that made my college dorm look spacious. David and Maria made similar sacrifices. We worked out of Maria's garage in Redwood City, surrounded by boxes of her husband's old sporting equipment and a washer that rattled like a freight train during spin cycles. For the first 2 months, we were ghosts. No LinkedIn updates, no social media presence, no networking events. While John was doing podcast interviews about his breakthrough in federated learning, we were writing code 18 hours a day, surviving on instant ramen and pure spite. The beauty of my position was that I knew exactly where John would fail. He had my initial concept, but not the deep understanding of why certain architectural choices mattered. I'd watched him during those 3 agonizing weeks, noted every misunderstanding, every shortcut he'd tried to take. He was building a house on foundation I knew was cracked. We built Aurelia differently. Where John's team was creating a one-size-fits-all platform, we built modularity into our core. Where he was focusing on impressive demos, we obsessed over real-world implementation. Where he was chasing headlines, we were filing patents, 17 of them in the first 4 months, all with my name listed as primary inventor. Our first break came from an unexpected source. Dr. James Wright, my old advisor from MIT, reached out after hearing through the academic grapevine that I'd left Neuroforge. Emily, what the hell happened? You were building something extraordinary there. Over coffee in Palo Alto, I told him everything. He listened, his face growing darker with each detail. That bastard, he said finally. John Hale came to me last month, trying to recruit our PhD students. Couldn't answer a single technical question without deflecting. I'm building the real thing now, I said, sliding a technical brief across the table. But we need funding. James read it again, then pulled out his phone. Helen Chen at Fundamental Ventures. She was my student 15 years ago. She'll want to see this. The meeting with Helen changed everything. She didn't just understand the technology, she understood the story. A woman founder building revolutionary AI after being betrayed by a male colleague? In the post-Me Too era of Silicon Valley, it was catnip for investors looking to change the narrative. I'll give you $2 million seed funding, she said after a 2-hour technical deep dive. But I want to see a working prototype in 6 months. We delivered it in 4. The prototype was elegant in a way John's could never be. While Neuroforge was still struggling with basic implementation, I heard through the gossip network that they'd had 3 technical leads quit. We demonstrated federated learning across 10,000 simulated devices, processing medical imaging data without a single privacy violation. Word spread quietly at first. Engineers talked to engineers. CTOs whispered to other CTOs. While John was giving keynotes at second-tier conferences, we were running private demos for Fortune 500 companies. Samsung was our first major client. They needed a way to improve their device AI without sending user data to central servers. John's team had pitched them. But their solution required fundamental changes to Samsung's architecture. ours plugged in like Lego blocks. Your technology is exactly what we've been looking for, their head of AI said after our demo. How soon can you scale? That night, Maria, David, and I sat in the garage staring at a contract worth $10 million. We need a real office, David said. We need a real team. Maria added, we need to move fast, I said. John's about to learn what happens when you steal something you don't understand. I hired carefully, strategically, some of the best engineers from Neuroforge, the ones who'd watched John's theft in disgust, quietly sent resumes. I poached 2 machine learning experts from Google, a systems architect from Amazon, and a cryptography specialist from Apple. Each person I hired was someone John had either ignored, underestimated, or stepped on during his climb. We took office space in downtown Riverside Bay, 6 blocks from Neuroforge, close enough that John would drive past our building every morning, watching our logo grow larger as our team expanded from 10 to 30 to 50 people in 6 months. The tech press started noticing. Aurelia Systems, the AI startup you've never heard of that's quietly revolutionizing machine learning. TechCrunch wrote, they called me for an interview. I declined. Let John chase headlines. I was chasing market dominance. By month 8, we had contracts with 6 Fortune 500 companies. Our revenue was approaching $30 million annually. VCs were calling daily, begging to invest. We were selective, choosing partners who understood that we weren't just building a product. We were building a future where the best technology won, not the best self-promoter. Meanwhile, Neuroforge was struggling. Their platform, built on a foundation of my stolen ideas but lacking the crucial understanding of why those ideas worked, was buggy, difficult to implement, and consistently underperformed in real-world applications. John kept pivoting, announcing new features that never quite materialized, burning through investor money while producing mediocre results. I heard from former colleagues that he was growing desperate, pushing the team to work weekends, firing anyone who questioned his technical decisions, becoming increasingly paranoid that someone was sabotaging him. It was me. Not through corporate espionage or dirty tricks, but simply by building what he claimed to have built, only better, faster, and with the deep understanding he'd never possessed. The chess pieces were all in position. The queen was about to take the king. The call came on a Thursday afternoon, 18 months after I'd walked out of Neuroforge. I was in our conference room, reviewing quarterly projections with our CFO, when David burst in, phone in hand, grinning like he'd won the lottery. Emily, you need to take this. It's Goldman Sachs. The next hour changed everything. They didn't just want to invest, they wanted to lead a Series B round at a valuation of $1.2 billion. Aurelia Systems, the company born in a garage from spite and genius, was officially a unicorn. I sat in my office afterward, staring at the number. $1.2 billion. Not because we had the best marketing or the smoothest pitch deck, but because we'd built something that actually worked. Every hospital using our platform for diagnostic AI, every bank detecting fraud without compromising customer privacy, every smartphone learning user patterns without sending data to the cloud. They all validated what I'd known from the beginning. The idea was solid. The execution was everything. The Financial Times broke the story first. Aurelia Systems achieves unicorn status in record time, redefining AI privacy standards. Within hours, my phone exploded. Reporters, investors, competitors. Everyone wanted to know how we'd done it. But the call I was waiting for came from Marcus, my old CEO at Neuroforge. Emily, congratulations, he said, his voice strained. You've built something remarkable. Thank you, Marcus. I kept my tone neutral, professional. Listen, I know things ended poorly, but I'm calling because we'd like to explore a partnership. Our platforms could complement each other. I almost laughed. Neuroforge's platform was hemorrhaging clients. Their latest deployment at a major retailer had failed spectacularly. And John had just announced another strategic pivot, startup speak for nothing is working. I appreciate the call, Marcus, but I don't think that would be appropriate. Emily, I know what happened with John and your work. I should have handled it differently. Now I did laugh, short and bitter. Yes, you should have. The silence stretched before he spoke again. He's struggling, Emily. The platform isn't performing. The board is asking questions. We could really use your expertise. My expertise was available 18 months ago. You chose John's PowerPoints over my code. Good luck with that choice. I hung up. The media attention intensified after the unicorn announcement. Forbes wanted to put me on their cover. The programmer who became Silicon Valley's newest billionaire. The New York Times ran a profile. How Emily Carter built the AI platform everyone wants. Even my mother, who still didn't quite understand what I did, knew something big had happened when her neighbors started asking if she was really Emily Carter's mother. You're famous now, she said during our weekly call. My daughter, the genius. I'm not famous, Mom. The work is famous. Same thing, honey. Your father would be so proud. But the sweetest moment came during a routine industry conference in San Francisco. I was leaving a panel discussion when I ran into John in the lobby. He looked older, grayer, the confident swagger replaced by something hunted and desperate. Emily. He tried to smile. Congratulations on the funding. John. I nodded, starting to walk past. Wait. He caught my arm, then quickly let go when I looked at his hand. I wanted to say, what you've built at Aurelia, it's impressive. It's what I was building at Neuroforge, actually, before you stole it. His face flushed. That's not... I mean, we both know innovation happens in parallel. Stop. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. We both know exactly what you did. You took my notebooks, my code, my ideas, and you thought you could build an empire on theft. But you forgot one thing. You never understood how it actually worked. Emily, please. The board is breathing down my neck. Neuroforge is 3 months from bankruptcy. If you could just help you, like you helped me when you stood in front of the board and claimed my work as your own. He had the audacity to look wounded. I was trying to get resources for the project. I always planned to bring you in, as a technical contributor, to my own invention. Around us, people were starting to notice our conversation. Someone raised a phone. Nothing stayed private in Silicon Valley for long. I'm sorry, he said finally, the words seeming to physically pain him. I'm sorry I took credit for your work. I studied him for a moment. This man who'd stolen my idea and thought he could steal my future. I'm not, because if you hadn't, I might still be at Neuroforge, building someone else's dream. Instead, I built my own company, my own future, my own billion-dollar valuation. So, thank you. John, your betrayal was the best thing that ever happened to me. I walked away, leaving him standing in the lobby, surrounded by people who were already tweeting about what they'd overheard. That night, my team took over a bar in Palo Alto to celebrate the unicorn status. Maria raised a toast to Emily, who proved that the best revenge isn't served cold, it's served at a $1.2 billion valuation. The room erupted in cheers. I raised my own glass, thinking about the garage where we'd started, the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, the moment I decided to fight back with code instead of lawyers. To building things that matter, I said, and to the people who actually build them. As we drank and laughed and planned our next phase of growth, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Neuroforge Labs announces emergency board meeting amid technical failures and client exodus. I deleted it without reading the article. I had more important things to focus on, like changing the world, one line of code at a time. 3 weeks after our unicorn announcement, I received an unexpected email from Raj, my old colleague from Neuroforge's infrastructure team. John's planning something big, press conference next Friday. He's been telling everyone it's going to revolutionize the industry. Thought you should know. I called an emergency meeting with David and Maria. He's desperate, Maria said, scrolling through Neuroforge's recent press releases. Their last quarter was a disaster. This has to be a Hail Mary. David pulled up some code on his laptop. My friend at Neuroforge says they've been frantically hiring contractors, trying to patch their platform. Whatever John's announcing, it's held together with duct tape and prayers. I studied the timing. Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern, maximum media coverage, right before the weekend news cycle. John was betting everything on this. When's our next product update scheduled? I asked. 3 weeks. David replied. Move it up to Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. Maria's eyes widened. That's 4 hours before John's announcement. Exactly. We worked around the clock for the next 6 days. What we'd planned as a minor update became something extraordinary. Aurelia Platform 3.0, with features that made our previous versions look primitive. Real-time adaptation across millions of devices, quantum-resistant encryption, and most importantly, a breakthrough in efficiency that reduced computational costs by 90%. But I wasn't done. I called Helen, our first investor. I need a favor, I said. Can you arrange a meeting with the tech reporters covering John's announcement? Thursday night, off the record. What are you planning, Emily? Justice. Thursday evening, I met with 8 journalists at a private room in a Palo Alto restaurant. Among them were reporters from TechCrunch, Wired, and the Wall Street Journal, all planning to cover John's announcement. Before we start, I said, placing a folder on the table. Everything I'm about to show you is under embargo until 10 a.m. tomorrow. Agreed? They nodded, curiosity piqued. I opened the folder, revealing dated notebooks, emails, and Git commits, all from my time at Neuroforge, all predating John's first mention of federated learning by months. Holy shit, the Wired reporter whispered. He really did steal it. That's not why you're here, I said. I don't need you to write that story. The market has already decided who built the better platform. You're here because tomorrow, John Hale is going to announce Neuroforge's breakthrough in federated learning. I want you to know exactly what you're looking at. I pulled up my laptop, showing them John's platform architecture. I'd pieced it together from public patents, GitHub repos, and information from former Neuroforge engineers who'd joined Aurelia. These are the critical flaws, I said, highlighting sections of code. Here's where their memory management fails at scale. Here's why their encryption is vulnerable. And here, I pointed to a particular module, is where they're using deprecated libraries that will cause cascade failures under load. The room was silent as the implications sank in. You're telling us his big announcement is built on a foundation of sand? The TechCrunch reporter asked. I'm telling you to ask the right questions tomorrow. Ask about scalability benchmarks. Ask about security audits. Ask about client retention rates. And then, I smiled. At 10 a.m., you'll see what real federated learning looks like. Friday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern. Our announcement went live. Aurelia Platform 3.0 with a free tier for educational institutions and nonprofits. Within minutes, it was trending on every tech platform. MIT announced they were adopting it immediately. Stanford followed within an hour. At 2 p.m., I watched John's press conference from our office, surrounded by my team. He stood at the podium, trying to project confidence in his expensive suit, announcing Neuroforge's revolutionary federated learning platform 2.0. The demo started well enough, a rehearsed scenario with preloaded data. But then the questions began. Mr. Hale, how does this compare to what Aurelia released this morning? The Wired reporter asked. John's smile faltered. We're focused on our own innovation. Can you share your scalability benchmarks? The TechCrunch reporter interrupted. We're still optimizing. What about the security vulnerabilities in your encryption layer? John went pale. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Your Git repository shows you're using OpenSSL 1.0.2, which has been deprecated for 2 years. The questions came faster, more technical, more damaging. John fumbled each one, his technical ignorance finally exposed on a global stage. The demo crashed halfway through. When he tried to restart it, error messages flooded the screen. Within an hour, Neuroforge fail was trending. Tech Twitter was merciless. Someone leaked internal emails showing John frantically demanding his team fix problems he didn't understand. By market close, Neuroforge's stock had dropped 47%, but I wasn't finished. That evening, I published a Medium post titled On Innovation, Integrity, and Building the Future. I never mentioned John by name, but I detailed my journey from discovering federated learning to building Aurelia. I included images of my original notebooks, dated and notarized, showing the evolution of the idea. Real innovation, I wrote, cannot be stolen, only imitated. Because true understanding, the kind that builds unicorns and changes industries, lives not in PowerPoints or pitch decks, but in the minds of those who do the work. The post went viral. Within 24 hours, it had 1 million views. The tech community connected the dots immediately. John Hale became a cautionary tale, his name synonymous with corporate theft and incompetence. Monday morning, the news broke. Jonathan Hale had been terminated as product director of Neuroforge Labs, effective immediately. The board also announced an investigation into irregularities in product development claims. He was done. Finished. No tech company would touch him after such a public implosion. In less than 24 hours, he'd gone from attempting a comeback to complete career annihilation. The 24 hours that followed John's press conference were the most extraordinary of my professional life. I watched from our war room, what we'd started calling the conference room where my team had gathered to witness the announcement, as John's career unraveled in real time. 3:47 p.m. Friday. The first domino fell when a prominent tech blogger posted a side-by-side comparison of John's demo versus ours. One of these platforms works. The other is held together with wishful thinking, he wrote. The post got 50,000 shares in 2 hours. 5:23 p.m. Reuters reported that 3 of Neuroforge's major clients were reassessing their partnerships following the failed demonstration. Samsung, who had chosen us over them months earlier, issued a statement. We're confident in our technology partnership choices. Everyone knew what that meant. 7:15 p.m. An anonymous Neuroforge employee leaked internal Slack messages to TechCrunch. John berating engineers. John demanding impossible fixes. John claiming the demo failure was sabotage. The messages painted a picture of a man spiraling into paranoia and desperation. Jesus, David said, reading over my shoulder. He's completely lost it. By 10 p.m., John Hale fail had replaced the Neuroforge fail as the trending topic. Someone had created a meme of John's frozen expression when the demo crashed, captioned, "When you steal homework but can't explain it to the teacher." It was cruel, juvenile, and everywhere. I didn't sleep that night, not from excitement or anxiety, but from a strange sense of watching destiny unfold. Every refresh brought new developments. 2:34 a.m. Saturday. The Wall Street Journal published a deep dive they'd apparently been working on for weeks. The unraveling of a Silicon Valley prophet, how Jonathan Hale's house of cards collapsed. They'd interviewed former colleagues, tracked his history of taking credit for others' work, documented a pattern of behavior spanning years. 6:45 a.m. John's LinkedIn post. Attempting damage control backfired spectacularly. The future belongs to those who dare to innovate, he'd written, along with vague accusations about competitive sabotage and coordinated attacks. The comments section turned into a bloodbath. Engineers who'd worked under him shared their stories. One comment from a former Neuroforge developer simply said, "Emily Carter invented federated learning. We all knew it. We all watched you steal it." 8:30 a.m. The Neuroforge board called an emergency meeting. I knew because Marcus texted me. Board convening. This is bad, Emily. Really bad. I didn't respond. There was nothing to say. By noon Saturday, tech journalists were calling it the fastest career suicide in Silicon Valley history. Someone had started a Wikipedia page, Neuroforge Federated Learning Controversy. My name appeared 47 times. John's appeared twice as many, none of them flattering. The killing blow came at 4 p.m. Saturday. Business Insider published an investigation that found John had fabricated parts of his resume. The Stanford MBA he claimed? He'd attended 2 semesters of night classes. The successful exit he bragged about? He'd been a junior employee at a company that got acquired. Maria found me in my office as the sun set Saturday evening, laptop still open to the endless stream of updates. "Emily, you need to see this." She showed me her phone. Neuroforge's website had been updated with a single banner. "Jonathan Hale is no longer employed by Neuroforge Labs, effective immediately." 20 hours, that's all it had taken. Sunday morning brought the final twist. John had hired a PR crisis firm and attempted a redemption narrative on a sympathetic podcast. But the host, known for softball interviews, had done his homework. "You claim Emily Carter was just a junior engineer implementing your vision," the host said. "But I have here her Git commits from 6 months before you joined the Federated Learning Project. Can you explain that?" John's response was a word salad of corporate speak and deflection. The interview was terminated early when John allegedly threw his microphone and stormed out. The audio of the microphone hitting the wall became another meme within hours. By Sunday afternoon, it was over. John's Twitter account went private. His LinkedIn disappeared. Sources said he'd been escorted from Neuroforge's building by security, carrying a single box of belongings while employees watched in silence. I gathered my team Sunday evening. We'd spent the weekend watching our competitor implode, but I needed to refocus us. "Tomorrow, we get back to work," I said. What happened to John was justice, but it's not our mission. Our mission is to build technology that matters. This weekend proved we're on the right path, but the path doesn't end here. "What about Neuroforge?" someone asked. "They're finished, right?" "Neuroforge will survive or fail based on their next moves," I said. "That's not our concern. Our concern is the 2 billion devices that could be running Aurelia platform by next year. The hospitals that need our technology, the financial institutions waiting for our security updates, the future we're building." As my team dispersed, energized and ready for Monday, I remained in the conference room. Through the window, I could see Neuroforge's building in the distance, its lights mostly dark. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "You destroyed me." "John." I typed back. "No. You destroyed yourself the moment you decided to steal instead of create." I blocked the number, closed my laptop, and prepared for Monday. We had a unicorn to build, partnerships to forge, technology to perfect. The future was waiting, and for the first time in 18 months, it was entirely ours to shape. The war was over, the work continued. 6 months have passed since that extraordinary 24 hours. Aurelia Systems is now valued at $3.2 billion, with offices in 12 countries and a platform powering AI for a quarter of Fortune 500 companies. We went public last month, and watching my employees become millionaires from their stock options was more satisfying than any personal wealth could ever be. Neuroforge Labs was acquired by a private equity firm for parts, their few valuable patents sold off, their office space converted to condos. Marcus sent me a note after the sale. "You were right about everything. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I never responded. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. John Hale disappeared from Silicon Valley entirely. The last anyone heard, he was teaching introductory computer science at a community college in Nebraska, using a slightly different version of his name. Sometimes I wonder if he ever opens his laptop and sees our logo, Aurelia Systems, the aurora that couldn't be contained, and remembers the moment he thought he could steal lightning and hold it in his hands. My mother visited our headquarters last week. I walked her through our offices, introduced her to the brilliant people building the future, showed her the wall where we'd framed my original notebooks, the ones John had copied, now displayed like art. She stood there for a long moment, touching the glass gently. "You did it, baby," she said quietly. "You showed them all." "No, Mom," I said. "I just built what was always meant to be built." But late at night, when I'm alone in my office overlooking Riverside Bay, I allow myself a moment of raw honesty. The truth is, revenge did drive me. Fury was my fuel. The betrayal lit a fire that transformed me from a competent engineer into someone who could build a unicorn from spite and brilliance. Would I have built Aurelia without John's betrayal? Maybe. Probably. The idea was too good to stay buried. But would I have built it with such ferocity, such determination, such absolute refusal to fail? Never. Standing at my office window now, I can see the old Neuroforge building, dark and empty, a monument to what happens when you mistake theft for innovation. Below, the city lights stretch toward the bay, each one representing someone working, striving, building. Some of them are using our platform right now, training AI models that will diagnose diseases, prevent fraud, protect privacy. Real innovation, making real differences. My phone buzzes with a calendar reminder, 60 Minutes interview, tomorrow, 2 p.m. They want to tell the story of Aurelia Systems, of the woman who built a unicorn after betrayal. They'll ask about John, about revenge, about what it felt like to watch him fall. I'll tell them the same thing I tell everyone. This was never about destroying Jonathan Hale. He was just an obstacle, a bug in the code that needed fixing. This was about building something that mattered, something that no one could steal because they'd never understand it the way I did. But, between you and me, watching him crash and burn in 24 hours while my company soared past $1 billion valuation, that felt fucking fantastic. The future belongs to the builders, not the thieves. John learned that lesson too late. He stole my idea thinking it would make his career. Instead, my idea ended his career in less than a day. There's poetry in that. The kind of poetry written in code and compiled into justice. I close my laptop, gather my things, and head home. Tomorrow, we announce our partnership with the Mayo Clinic to revolutionize medical AI. Next month, we're opening our European headquarters. Next year, who knows? Mars. Maybe. The technology is only limited by our imagination, and my imagination was forged in the fire of betrayal and tempered into something unbreakable. He stole my AI idea. I built a unicorn. His career ended in 24 hours. But my story? My story is just beginning. And to anyone out there coding in obscurity, watching others take credit for your brilliance, being told to wait your turn, be patient, be reasonable, remember this. The best revenge isn't served cold. It's served at a multi-billion-dollar valuation with your name on every patent, every press release, every line of code that matters. Build something they can't steal. Build something they can't understand. Build something that makes their theft irrelevant. Build your fucking unicorn. Thank you so much for listening to this story of betrayal, revenge, and ultimate triumph in Silicon Valley. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening to this story right now. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this tale of turning corporate theft into billion-dollar success resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever experienced workplace betrayal? How did you overcome it? Let's discuss in the comments below.